Hibiscus Children's Center has been in our community for over 30 years. And we're thrilled that we're here in meeting the need that really most in our community don't realize just how large the need is in our community to address abuse and neglect and abandonment. The good news is we're not here alone. Today I have several of our community partners, and I'm excited to welcome them here as we talk about how we can bring positive solutions to bear on this much needed need in our community. I have Caroline Beal here, who is our Chief Operating Officer and responsible for all of our clinical programs. I also have Carol Deloach from Devereaux Community-Based Care, and I have Debbie Butler here from Guardians for New Futures. Welcome.
Thank you.
So Caroline, why don't we start with you and just remind our audience what we do to serve children who are abused, abandoned, and neglected.
Well, Paul, I'm the COO of Hibiscus Children's Center, and I oversee our residential group homes. We have 2 residential group homes. We serve kids ages 0 to 17 who have entered the dependency system. I also oversee all of our clinical programs in each of the 4 counties.
Okay, great. So I mentioned we don't do this alone. As long as I've been here, it's been really, really clear. We have great staff doing great work, but we can't do it alone. And so, Carol, I'd like you to talk a little bit about Devereaux and how you partner with Hibiscus Children's Center.
Well, Devereaux Community-Based Care is a 501c3. We are 3 years old now, and we are the lead agency for child welfare services to serve the 4-county area of Treasure Coast and Okeechobee. And because of that, and because of the responsibilities that we have to work, either to develop services for kids that are left at home safely, but need services to wrap around them, or children who are removed from their home because it's not safe to leave them there and there are no relatives that we can find to place them with, then they come in to licensed care. And of course, Hibiscus has been there always to help us with finding placement for kids.
And we've really appreciated that relationship. And I like the way you opened up your introduction. We're talking primarily to a St. Lucie County audience, but we do have a wide geographic area that we serve. We're serving in Indian River County at our village there in Vero Beach. And then we also serve in Martin County in our shelter, which is where it all began for us.
Yeah.
And obviously we have a small footprint in Okeechobee, but we really enjoy being there because there are kids out there who need us. And then obviously we're here in St. Lucie County serving hundreds of kids every single month. And that is a good segue into why we have Debbie here. You know, we want to do more in St. Lucie County. So Debbie, why don't you tell us about your organization and why we're considering a partnership.
Okay. Guardians for New Futures is mission is to fund the unfunded needs of abused and neglected children. So we do several things. We provide an educational component, a child summit in the fall of each year. We do a gift drive in partnership with Devereaux to cover all of the abused and neglected children during the holidays. And our latest mission, of course, has been Sanctuary for Kids. We learned about a year and a half ago that when children come into care due to abuse and neglect, if there's not an immediate placement for them, they have to wait in an office. That can be several hours, overnight, and you know, we've had some cases that it's been a weekend. So we started our financial campaign in November of last year to build a house, which we're calling Sanctuary for Kids, where children can go immediately when they're removed. And of course, what a perfect partner than Hibiscus to bring all of this together. It was never our intent to run it. We don't have that. You know, we're a volunteer organization that just wants to make things happen. It's not that we have the expertise that you do to run it. So what a great partnership with the 4 of us. And it's really been, you know, with Carol's help and a couple of other people that have helped us, you know, make this happen. So, yeah.
When you think about it, it's really you know, we get the call, our placement unit does, from an investigator that a child is being removed and there's no relatives, so they need placement. We then make the call out to our foster homes, our child placing agencies, see if we can find a home. But that child stays with the investigator for at least 4 hours if we can't find something any sooner. After 4 hours, then that child becomes the responsibility of the case manager. And so, you know, when you look at the program, I mean, we're calling Hibiscus and seeing if there's any possibility, then you can take, and it's not just a child, usually it's a sibling group.
Right.
And that's even harder to find placement for. And now the sanctuary will give us a time to, you know, where a child can go and they don't have to be in an office, and it'll give people time to find placement.
And
Exactly.
also, you know, it's very interesting because we were talking to, there's a young woman that works for Devereaux that had been in the system, and she said to me early on, wow, if I'd had an opportunity to go to a place like this, my outlook going into foster care would have been so much more positive. So again, we all know, you know, the
Trauma.
Yes, the trauma that the children experience, but for them to go here and to be received, welcomed by trauma-informed care specialists, for them to have not the repeated trauma, it's going to make, I think, such a difference in the lives of these children.
I agree. I think when I consider the audience that's listening to us, people that know Hibiscus Children's Center are going to ask the question, well, aren't you already doing this? Don't you already have a large shelter that takes care of kids in Jensen Beach? And that's true. Caroline, you know, you had mentioned that we have a lot of residential care, and so in Jensen Beach, we do have a 36-bed shelter that's been there for 30 years. So we're just so thankful that our founder over 30 years ago had a very similar vision to what you're talking about, Debbie, and said, there are children who are in need, and we need to do something about it. And so that shelter was created. And then we migrated from there and wanted to address the needs of teenagers in Vero Beach. And so we're seeing upwards of 40 teenagers every day in that shelter. And so getting back to my original point, so you're already doing that. So why do we need this other house? Because it's not anything new, and yet there is a nuance that's different.
Right.
And that nuance has to do with, just like you said, Carol, the way children are removed from their homes and the requirements that the process has to go through, the 4 hours, up to 4 hours with a caseworker before they're actually placed. And it's that 4-hour period. And so, Caroline, walk us through what maybe our audience doesn't understand, that a child, you know, someone goes into a home and they start that removal process. And Carol, you may have to jump in here too. Again, we know it because we do it every day, but our audience doesn't really know. So can you walk us through that?
So when a child gets removed from their home, whether it be because of substance abuse, witnessing domestic violence, physical abuse, sexual abuse, the child protective investigator comes out and assesses, you know, the situation, and they have to make that call, which is a tough call to actually remove the child from the home. And once that happens, you know, like you were all explaining, that, you know, the DCM gets involved and they have to find a placement. Sometimes there's not a relative for the child to go to or an actual placement. Maybe the shelter's full, maybe they can't, you know, depending on the situation, there is no place for them to go. The good news is that Debbie Butler has, you know, done this huge campaign and built this house, and now they have a place to go. And it's in St. Lucie County, where we don't have that type of facility. So, and it's a house. So if they have to go somewhere, it's going to be less traumatizing for that child and the people there. So.
Yeah, and another thing I think that our community does not realize is one of the reasons we have it in St. Lucie County is because it is central to our entire circuit. So it's quick to get to Sanctuary. We're only a couple of minutes from the hospital if needed. And the other thing that I don't think people understand is the amount of children that are removed in our circuit every month due to abuse and neglect. And this time last year, it was an average of 46 children a month.
We are exceeding that.
Right.
It's now up in the 50s. And
Well, and that's the point I was trying to get to, Debbie.
Absolutely.
And that's the problem with having experts who are so dedicated to this, because we all want to jump in and tell our story.
So
but
true.
but if we follow the path that Caroline started, there's a hard decision that's been made to remove a child. Let's talk, Carol, about that child that's removed. You're in that decision-making process. Why are they in an office building? What's driving that?
well, once the investigator makes that determination in consultation with their supervisor that there's a safety issue and the children aren't safe to remain, then they remove them, and the children go with the investigator back to the office. The call is made to our placement staff. We have a child, we have a sibling group. These are what we see as the needs, and then we have to find placement.
Right.
And the agreement that we have, and all the CBCs, there are 17 CBCs statewide.
And CBC stands for?
Community-based care
Okay.
lead agency.
Okay.
And so, you know, the written agreement that we have with the department is that we need 4 hours because we have to be able to call. You've got to be able to, you know, is this kids we can accept? Is there room? Are there foster parents that can take them? So it takes time for all of those calls, and then call back. So the agreement is 4 hours with the investigator. If we can't find a placement in 4 hours, it then comes to whoever is going to do the case management.
Right.
And that child stays with us until placement is found.
Right. And so that's what I'm trying to get
And
our folks to understand. So if you can imagine, pick any age child, but let's pick a 4-year-old that through no fault of their own is going through this process at 2 in the morning.
It's horrible.
Our caseworkers, they're doing champions work, trying to provide a safe place for this child, but it's 2 in the morning. A 4-year-old at 2 in the morning, removed from their home. Now they're in an office building. We talk a lot about trauma-informed care. There's a lot of trauma going on as a result of our trying to rescue this child.
Absolutely.
A new place, unfamiliar office setting, not very welcoming, which kind of drives us right back to you, Debbie, and why you had a vision for this. So tell us about the house. Tell us what they're going to walk into. When this child is removed from a home, instead of going to an office building, they go to what?
They come to a home that is equipped for them. Just like any home, it has a kitchen, a living room, a family room, big screen TV. It has a play area for the children. Everything is brand new. Everything is welcoming. Everything is positive. It is the kind of place that I would want my child or grandchildren to go to. We have toys for them. We'll have, for the older kids, Xbox, things that will interest them. Again, it's a wonderful distraction, a loving distraction for the crisis that they've already gone through. It's got a big yard. It's got a screened-in patio. I love it. I want to go there.
Right.
And it's going to be beautifully decorated and warm and welcoming. And when you're in an office, you know, the investigator's busy doing paperwork or the case manager, and these poor kids are they've been traumatized. As difficult as it is, and you go in and you look at a situation and you say this child can simply not stay there, it is not safe, but that's their home.
Right.
And so people sometimes have a hard time understanding how traumatic it is. And now, you know, they're concerned, are they going to be with their siblings? If they have siblings, are we going to have to separate them? And so they oftentimes, they're there hearing discussion. Well, we don't have a place yet. It makes a child feel absolutely, you know, unwelcome and extraneous. And so being able to have Hibiscus, you know, take over this home that sanctuary that Debbie's been able to put together. And they don't have to hear that. They can just, have pajamas and a shower and a meal and then let us worry about what we have to do and the discussions that we have to have.
Exactly. And I want to make sure we get the contrast. So when I think, Caroline, of a child that's been removed from a home, all the things that Carol just talked about is that the time and the process and the requirements that you have to go through from the state's point of view to make sure that we're taking the right steps to place this child in the right place. So there are times in that process where Carol calls us and places a child with the shelter. So what's the difference between being placed at the shelter and being placed in the sanctuary for kids home?
Well, the difference really is that with the sanctuary for kids, it's more of a soft landing because it's a temporary solution. That maybe that in that 4 hours or thereafter, they are going to find a relative placement or another type of placement where it's going to be a short-term solution. If they go to the Hibiscus shelter, it's a planned thing. It's a planned placement. Or to the village. So that's really the difference, that the sanctuary is a soft landing and it gives everybody time to find the most appropriate placement.
And I think that's an important distinction.
Yes.
When you think of residential care, typically the process that has taken place is that we've done a general assessment of the child's condition. We made the decision to remove them from the home. And because we don't have a sanctuary for kid home now, oftentimes that child is sitting in an office building. Sometimes that's not the case. Sometimes they do come to Hibiscus or an agency like Hibiscus, but by and large they end up in an office building. When they come to us, what the community doesn't usually understand is just how long we really have children once they're placed in residential care. Oftentimes they're there for 24, 36 hours or 4 or 5 days, but we have children that stay at the shelter and the village for 3 and 4 years because their placement is so complicated. So that scenario is very, very different than the planned strategy for the sanctuary for kids home. It's a 23.5-hour solution. Is that right, Debbie?
Correct, correct. And one thing I'd also like to add is that you've all been very generous in saying Debbie's done this, and I haven't. I mean, it really has been the community. I'm just sort of the crazy lady that's out there, pushing things. But really, more than $90,000 toward this project has come from people in our viewing audience that wrote a check for $25, $50, $100. We are so blessed to have such a giving, caring community, and I just want our audience to know that a lot of times people think, I really would like to help, but I don't know how. And call any one of us, and we're happy, right, to share with them how they can help abused and neglected kids.
Well, that's a great segue. Has the need been met? We don't need any more help from the community. We're done. We've got a house and it's over.
We continue to need help. We will continue to have a list on Target and Toys R Us, Babies R Us for the needs of the house. We've been very fortunate to have organizations step up to be able to supply things, but as you know, we want the children, when they come in, if there's a toy that they become attached to, they can take the toy, or a book. They're going to have a blankie, they're going to have a quilt, their own pillowcase. They'll take all of those things with them. So we need to be sure that we are continuing to supply the house with things that the children can then take with them. So, because that means a lot, to have something of your own.
Some kids come in with nothing.
We see that every day, Carol. We see that every day where a child will come in, and I don't think, again, our audience understand what we really mean when we're saying nothing. Oftentimes we're in a state of crisis when a child is removed from a home, so you don't have the luxury of time to pack a suitcase, and sometimes there's not a suitcase. There aren't clothing items that we take for granted. There isn't a favorite doll, and many times we'll get children that really have nothing because the primary focus was get that baby or child out of that situation. They're wearing a diaper and that's all they've got on, and now we're responsible for that child.
Yeah, and I'd like to also add that, when we talk about communities, we're all about collaboration. I know all of us are. We also have Hope's Closet, who is working with the other closets in Indian River and Martin County, and they are going to be supplying all of the clothes to the children that come into Sanctuary for Kids. So we've covered almost every single base that, for the needs of the child while they're coming into Sanctuary.
And this was exactly what, when community-based care was first envisioned back in 2004, and the whole system of child welfare, other than investigations, well, in some areas it's was privatized. But the idea was that the communities would know better what was needed for the kids in their community and to develop resources to meet those needs. And so you look at Hibiscus, you look at Guardians for New Futures and Sanctuary, and we're just so grateful, for everyone's involvement. You go to meetings here and people come to the table and want to help. And so,
We're definitely looking for more volunteers. In addition to the trained professional staff, we are looking for volunteers to come to the sanctuary just like they come, to our other locations and help out, maybe doing laundry, meals on the weekends, just being present.
Rocking babies.
yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you talked about the community-based element of this. That really has been kind of the keynote phrase around healthcare reform. And whether you're for healthcare reform or not, that's not the point. The point is these children are being removed from their home. So it's not a good strategy to remove a child from their home, let's say in Miami, and then bring them here. Because mom and dad are still in Miami, or grandma is still in Miami, or friends are still in Miami. So using our illustration, when a child is removed from any of these 4 counties that we represent, it's in the child's best interest to keep them in this community. Hopefully, there's going to be a family member that can raise their hand and say, I can take care of this child. But while we're trying to figure that out by the use of a Sanctuary for Kids home, it gives us an opportunity to figure that out. And even if we don't place the child with a family member right away, the goal is always reunification. We want to make sure that, to your point earlier, Carol, we're removing these kids from their home, and whether they've gone through a bad circumstance or not, that's still home. That's still mom and dad.
Absolutely.
So we're hoping that there's some sort of rehabilitation that takes place in whatever that situation is, where we can help them to have better parenting skills and then get that child back into their family and stay in their school districts and those types of things.
And that's really what our responsibility is to look at develop community-based services so that we can help support the parents as best we can. And every case of a child that's removed, anyway, they have a case plan. You're in court, but we also make use not just of while the kids may be in care, and we're linking them with services, community-based services, often provided by Hibiscus or other providers, to work with the parents. And the goal is we have 12 months by federal law to help the parents prevail, work their services, get their kids back, so that and if we can't do that, then of course we have to look at other options. But it's again, community-based service needs, and we look to our partners to develop that cadre of services that are needed.
Well,
what a perfect thing. I mean, all of us, because not that I'm an expert, in any of this, but I mean, the fact that all of us come together with a common goal and collaborating to make this happen for the children. So I do hope that we have even more stakeholders in our community that step up to provide even more for our kids.
Well, we'll wrap up our discussion with that opportunity. As I think about Sanctuary for Kids, what it represents for Hibiscus Children's Center is an expanded opportunity to serve. We're proud that we've been in Jensen Beach for 30 years. We're proud that we're in Vero Beach with the Village for the older kids. We're proud that we're in Okeechobee. But geographically, we have not had this kind of a footprint in St. Lucie County. And we serve a lot of families and a lot of kids in St. Lucie County.
Yes. Yeah.
So I think it's just such a great opportunity for us to have a house like this that you were able to get donor support to build in a residential kind of setting, a neighborhood as you maybe is a better way to say it.
Yes.
And now St. Lucie County, has something they can kind of hold on to themselves. Now we're still going to need the shelter, and we're going to still need the village, but geographically, as you've mentioned, there's a corridor along I-95 and the Turnpike where it's just easier access, which means we're giving quicker, more timely services to kids who are already traumatized. So let's get them in a nice, comfortable home quickly. So it's not replacing anything that Hibiscus has been doing.
Exactly.
It's building upon this service delivery model to help us be more efficient.
Yeah. Exactly.
So why don't we give our audience an opportunity to help? Where is there a need? So I can mention one. Obviously, we're a donor-supported agency, so we need the help of our audience to provide financial resources to us. But there's more than that. You've mentioned volunteers. How can they volunteer?
Well, it's really up to that person and how much they want to be involved. They can do a one-time type of event. They can be there, maybe once a month. So they can always go to our website, hibiscuschildrencenter.org, and they can apply online to become a volunteer, and we will actually train them and give them tools if they want to do things more hands-on at the sanctuary and be more present with our kids.
And when we're running the Sanctuary for Kids home, we know we're going to have some paid staff, but there's going to be opportunities for volunteers. So it's, we're open 24 hours. You don't know when a child is going to come. So if there are volunteers who want to, maybe, as Debbie said, sit in a recliner, hold a child, comfort that child, if that's what they want to do for 4 hours or 8 hours or 2 hours, that's an opportunity as well?
Exactly, yes.
Okay, great. Are there other things that you would remind our audience where they might step in and help?
Well, more than half of the children that we serve, in-home, out-of-home, come from St. Lucie County. And so, while Sanctuary is near and dear, we're just so grateful. For us, we need foster parents. We need mentors. We need there's a need for guardian ad litem. There's so many ways that people can become involved. And,
and every skill and every expertise that a person has, all you have to do is call one of us, and we can tell you how that can be utilized. I mean, look at me. My background is international business.
Well,
it's not this, but I'm learning.
We're glad you stepped in.
That's right.
Well, I'm so thankful that all three of you are here today. So on behalf of all the children we serve, thank you for being here. I hope you've learned what you needed to know to get more involved with helping our community to meet the need of children who are innocent victims of abuse, abandonment, and neglect. Without you, we can't make the difference that we make. So if you're interested, please look us up on our website at hibiscuschildrencenter.org. And we thank you for all that you do to help us make a positive difference in the lives of children who need us most. Thank you.